Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker. So many struggle with hidden trauma. In most cases, it's an emotional trauma pushed down deep into one's very soul. We learn to cope with it and wear a mask to hide it, but what if that trauma is actually an undiagnosed, debilitating brain injury? Imagine what it would be like to have symptoms so profound that you could not get out of bed for 10 years. That is just a part of the amazing journey of our next guest, who, against every obstacle, found the strength to harness something within her that would not let her die. Her journey took her down a path that would ultimately reveal that she was worth so much more than 50 cents on the dollar. She was actually miraculously made whole and worth more than silver and gold. Cordila Jochim leads and inspires as an author, motivational speaker, and brand and business growth analyst. Ignited by those who are hungry for more, CORE's growth agency, COREhouse, arms people and companies with tools to drive core alignment, create positive and lasting change, and stretch themselves to reach for and achieve increased impact, results, and growth. She comes by the title Growth Catalyst, honestly. When she finally emerged victorious in 2014 after traumatic brain injury had left her home and bedbound for a decade, what was left of her life burned to the ground. In order to grow, CORE had to not only rebuild her life, but learn who she was at the core, and from the bedrock move forward. She embraced a 5-year season in which she healed boldly, transformed powerfully, and learned to live whole. She now infuses her trade as a storied brand and business strategy executive with this visceral, unusual, and very human experience to catapult individuals and entrepreneurs into next level growth. You can learn more at www.cordilajochim.com. Joining us now to share her incredible story is the author of From the Core, A Spiritual Journey of Losing Everything, Finding Hope, is Cordila Jochim. Core, welcome to Revealing the Truth.
Thank you for having me, Rabbi. I've been very excited for our date today.
Well, this is our date, and I will tell you, it's a date with destiny, it's a date with the miraculous, it's a date with the supernatural, and it's a date with a compelling story that gripped me from the very beginning as I journeyed with you, walked hand in hand with you, wanting to beg God on your behalf. Can't you just speed this up? Can't you just refine her in a shorter period of time? Can it be now? And then more of the story unfolded, and I kept saying, okay, well, now, and I'm actually interceding for you. I'm going, okay, enough is enough.
Yeah.
All right, so Lord, this is too long. This is too much. I don't know that I can endure what she endured. But yet, I see the miraculous hand that you have on her and why you trusted her to invest so much in her through pain and suffering, that his trust in you was a Job-like trust, from an unknowing to a knowing, from being defeated to being a champion, to being broken and then healed and strong in the broken places. I want to go back 40 years ago in your life to a 7-year-old girl playing with her brother.
Yeah.
Take us back to that fated day where it all began.
Man, we barely even started and you moved me to tears. That day you said something as we were preparing to talk today, and you said, only in hindsight do we see the hand of God. And really only in hindsight did I see that moment as the defining moment in my life. You've read the story, you know that the diagnoses of traumatic brain injury really only even came in 2019. We're talking about a minute and a half ago. So as you journeyed with me, I continue to get revelations, even in the writing of the book. Like even in the writing of the book, when I said yes to the assignment, I only then, saw some of the unveiling take place in my life. But 40 years ago, this year, I was actually talking to my mom, and she said that the fall occurred, she believes, in October or November. So we're coming up on the 40th year anniversary of the fall. And I had a brand new baby brother. I could not have been more excited about him. We lived in a Tudor house in Minneapolis, Minnesota, ironically at the epicenter of its own transformation. But for those who don't know what a Tudor house is, it's a brick house with a very steep steeple and an attic, generally upstairs. So my dad was renovating the attic to make way for our family's new addition. And so I was, my brother was under 1 year old. I was 7. We weighed just about the same because he was a real beefy kid and I just was nothing but skin and bones. And I had him on my hip. And, to this day, Rabbi, we don't exactly know what happened, but my dad had created this, over the steep attic stairs, he'd created this cutout window box that you would put a decorative ornament, like a vase or a flower pot or something like that, just as a decorative ornament to break up the monotony of the wall. It happened to overlook the stairs going down to the kitchen. That day, there was nothing there on that ledge, and it was a really wide ledge. So it wasn't this skinny thing. It was a very wide ledge. So somehow I had my brother on my bum, and we were equal height to this window ledge, and I had his little bum resting on the window ledge, and he had his hands over, as if he was reaching behind him, over the back of the window ledge. And my mom at that moment called down to us and asked us to come downstairs, which we did, just not in the way that anyone intended. So, unknown and a mystery to this day, both my brother and I fell over that wide window ledge. I landed on my back on the stairs. My brother landed on my stomach, thank God, because that could have gone very differently. But my brother landed on my stomach and with a bounce walked into the kitchen looking for food. He had expedited his journey downstairs and he knew food was in the kitchen. So he went in looking for food. And from that moment forward, I had a very different journey, not only from that fall, but really for the rest of my life. That fall caused a schism that rippled through the entirety of my life, through my physicality, through my emotional journey, and through the journey of my family. It dramatically altered the entire trajectory of our lives.
Cora, you write in the book that your symptoms were vertigo and nausea, constant nausea, that 40 years ago, we knew nothing about concussions and the traumatic long-term effect of a brain injury. But when you landed, you hit your head.
That's right. On the stairs.
On the stairs. And this set into motion almost at the brain stem.
That's right.
This unusual cascading of hormones and endorphins and adrenaline and just brain chemistry was altered, but nothing would show up in the blood work. Nothing would show up in any test of the time. So we're now talking about the 60s and 70s. We're talking about a period of time when medicine was not in the digital age. It was moving towards the digital age. But it was still medicine it was still doctors making house calls.
Yeah.
It was a different era.
It was a different era.
And you think about football players and helmets and what changes have taken place from just the leather cap that they used to wear to the hard, now impact resistant and shock absorbing materials they use because they know about concussions.
Yeah.
But not only were you physically debilitated, but you were relationally debilitated because you bore a label as a hypochondriac, as a less than. And you tell the story, and your father gave you a roll of coins, and he gave you some mint coins in a little display packet. And as you looked at them, you made an evaluation, an assessment that set into motion how you viewed yourself.
Right.
Tell us that story.
Okay. I want to talk about two things that you mentioned. You had mentioned debilitating nausea, and I just want to give people a framework because we've all experienced nausea. It's a very common symptom. But there's a difference between nausea and vomiting. One's in, the brain center and the stomach center. One, is because you're ill and something that's in you needs out. And so you go through a cycle of nausea and then hopefully vomiting, and then you have another side of it. When it's in the brain and it never stops, it takes you to the edge of that moment, that triggering moment between nausea and vomiting, but it never actually offers any relief. Not only that, but the nausea came with, people are now much more familiar with the sympathetic nervous system, which issues a fight or flight response. When you are in the threat of your life, in the throes of needing to survive, your body activates the sympathetic nervous system, which causes a fight or flight response. That system, because of the brain injury, is stuck on. So my body is oriented toward a consistent fight or flight. Why that is so important to the entirety of the story is that when you are running a fight or flight protocol, you are thinking of nothing else. Anyone can think about a moment where they were so pressed by terror that they had to either fight or flight. And to think that you would think about relational issues or vision casting a life or what you might want to be when you grow up, when you're running a fight or flight protocol, is an illusion. And so I lived stuck in fight or flight. So the nausea wasn't just nausea, it was every single neurological system issuing a 5-star alarm in my entire body. So nausea was the predominant symptom because, when nausea takes you to the edge like that, that's really the only thing you can kind of think about. But really, it was all systems in B firing. So, and I named it nausea. But the 50 cents on the dollar, and this is also something that I feel like so many people can relate to. I'm running this fight or flight protocol. I've fallen out of a window. I had been taken to the hospital, but because nothing was bleeding and nothing was falling off, I stayed overnight. I had blood in my urine, but outside of that, there was nothing visually or perceptibly wrong with me. Like you said, Rabbi, at that moment in time, given all the data and the testing that we had at that moment in time, nothing was wrong with me per that day's assessment. And so I was sent home and told I was fine. And I remember my family calling it a miracle. But it was anything but miraculous inside me. So that system continued to run, and I continued to have symptoms that were unrelenting from that moment forward. I would run to my parents' bedroom and say, I'm going to get sick, I'm going to get sick. You're a 7-year-old kid. And so the only person you want at that moment when you're going to get sick is your mom or your dad, you know? So I'd run into their bedroom really thinking I was going to get sick, and my mom would run with me into the bathroom and we would sit there, you know, hovered over the bowl, and then nothing would come. And it wasn't just minute after minute, it was sometimes hour after hour after hour, nothing. And I would be sweating and my mom would be doing all she could to console me. But just imagine sitting in that moment hour after hour. So over time, you know, my parents continued to take me to doctors. Doctors continued to run tests. The tests continued to come back normal. And so over time, they started shifting the conversation of we need to identify what's wrong with her to we know what's wrong with her. And this is something that's no longer something that we need to explore physically, but rather something that we need to explore emotionally and mentally. And because, you know, everyone, when problems are in front of you, you look for a solution. That is the natural order of the human mind. And so you look at what you have in your hand. And really, the only elements that they had in their hand at that time, having discounted the fall, was that I had a new baby brother. And so the conversation at that time shifted from there's something physically wrong with her to she must be jealous of her baby brother. And so that became the wisdom of the circumstance. That became the definition of the circumstance. And I was struggling with, at 7 years old, having some type of a knowing that something was wrong, physically wrong. I had a knowing of that. But when you have a growing chorus of adults and people who are knowledge holders at that age in your life that say to you something's wrong with you emotionally and mentally, those labels begin to take root. And so I was existing between the tension of my 7-year-old knowing of something being wrong with me and this growing consortium of individuals, often wearing white coats or certainly holding the title of adult, were telling me that something was wrong with me. I began to say to myself, something's wrong with me. And in the very same way that the doctors looked for something in their hands, I looked for something in mine to explain my circumstances. And my dad had given me, you're right, it was like a gold sleeve of minted coins. And I've talked to a lot of people my age, and many people had them. They must have been the gift of the day. You know, it was a little red velvet case with a plastic cover, and inside were these minted coins. It was like a shiny penny and a nickel and a dime and a 50-cent piece and a silver dollar. And again, I did not have this understanding of what I did at that time until much later. Right. But to define my circumstance and to help me understand myself and understand my circumstance in my 7-year-old mind, I told myself that something was wrong with me. I knew something was wrong with me physically. I began thinking something was wrong with me mentally and emotionally. And I told myself everyone else was a full dollar. And because I was broken, I was 50 cents. So it set me up with this behavior because out of every belief comes a behavior. So it set me up with the belief that I was unworthy and less than and 50 cents on the dollar, which began driving behaviors. It's even hard to talk about even now.
Let me give you a chance to take a breath.
Yeah, thank you.
Your dad was a pilot.
Yes.
Very much checklist oriented.
Yes.
Okay, everything has to be checked to make sure that it's in order. And he was a checklist father, and yes, things weren't in order. And if something wasn't in order, then it was defective. It needed to be repaired. It wasn't safe to fly. What didn't meet spec. It was something was a light was on. Something needed attention, and you would delay a flight if the pilot wouldn't sign off on the pre-flight checklist. He took that into his model of parenting as a father, and you weren't measuring up. And so although your mother had the gift of compassion, your father did not. And began to speak over you in a rejecting and harmful way. In hindsight, of course, we praise God that you did not have a perfect father on earth, for you would have no desire for a perfect father in heaven. And we give great thanks for the dad who drove you into the loving arms of God because of his style of love. And his style of love, and there's no question that he loved you, but the way he spoke to you, the way he denied and did not validate what it was you're going through and put the burden on you as a child was an adult burden that no child can bear. And he put the responsibility on you. And that's where a lot of this thinking came from, was that mom was frustrated. Mom was patient and nurturing, but still there was a little bit of edge to that as well. Is this ever going to end? Is this ever going to get better? Is this ever going to go away? Is this happening again? Are we back to where we started? Finally, to the point where you were so debilitated that you became bedridden. And here's a child that's no longer a child, who is pressing through and accomplishing things in the business world, things of significance, but yet fighting a battle that nobody really knew about until the landlord. And the landlord had, I don't want to say an unnatural affection, but it did morph into an unnatural affection. So I want to fast forward from thick skin. I want to fast forward through some of the great accomplishments as you pressed through, and you had little victories along the way. There were really mega victories when you take a look at your outstanding Academy Award-winning performance in a single appearance, all the way through to your brand building and the Oscar Awards and the Oprah Winfrey Show and the gift bag and the accomplishment of the highest fulfillment of any gift ever, and was the worst blessing that you had ever received. That
Yeah.
all these things were driving you to search for validation when your whole world was spinning out of control, and even to the point of a taxi cab ride, of being taken to the home of the man, a total stranger, driving a taxi because you had to get to a restroom so quickly, knowing that it would not produce anything, but you still had to go through. You couldn't go through that sense of falling, of going through this wormhole into nausea, which moved all of your blood out of the brain and into the abdomen, which then was so overwhelming to the system that you had no balance, you had no ability, you could not stand. But yet, even on that gurney, the day you would say, I hope the diagnosis is brain cancer, and I hope I die. That's where you got to. And here I was fighting for you all along and saying, okay, Lord, I'm going to put a stop to this right now. This is enough already. So take us to finding love for the first time. And the 7-year miscarriages, lumen, all such at the core of the story in your search for light, so much that the one flicker of a flame you named lumen.
Yeah.
Searching in all the darkness, searching for one flicker of light. I'm going to allow you a moment to compose yourself. Because I feel so close to you in this story. We're talking with Cordila Jochim, Core, author of a new book, From the Core, A Spiritual Journey of Losing Everything and Finding Hope. You have no idea the depth of despair, searching for a ray, one light in a sea of darkness. Nausea causes you to close your eyes, which makes it worse. And when you open your eyes, the light is your enemy. But yet something within Core's very being was searching for a flicker of light. Something ethereal, something that she couldn't define until she found it. Maybe you are in the throes of despair in your life, searching for something. You don't know what you're looking for. But you know there has to be something out there. There has to be an answer. And why are you enduring what you're enduring? I want you to stick around. When we return from break, we're going to take you to that moment of love, the heartbreak that followed, and then the divine appointment that changed everything and the entire trajectory of healing and of wholeness only after every piece lay broken on the ground. We'll be right back. The Lord meets you right where you are, and so does Igniting a Nation's new live streaming outlets. You can now watch Revealing the Truth, Revealing the Bible, and Prophecy Revealed simulcast live each Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Vimeo, Periscope, and through our website, www.ignitinganation.com. No matter what device you are using, our program will automatically scale so you won't have to miss a single program. And if you happen to miss an episode, you can always subscribe to the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel and access over 1,000 interviews and never miss your favorite authors, special guests, and topics that interest you the most.
There are lots of ways to see Israel, but nothing compares to seeing the land of the book and the people of the book through the eyes of two Jewish believers who can take you on a journey that will bring the entire Bible to life. When you join Rabbi Eric Walker and his #1 rated tour guide, Edo Canaan, in Israel, you'll experience incredible teachings, first-class accommodations, and actually walk where Jesus walked. You will experience the Bible transforming from black and white into living color, and you will never see the Bible in the same way again. For more information, visit us at www.ignitinganation.com/events.
The Lord contends with what contends with you, and Igniting a Nation is committed to bringing to light each and every issue that faces a believer's life. Our live stream programming and teachings take you on a journey to finding biblical truth from a wide variety of experts who share their insights into a deeper walk with the Lord. We have assembled the most comprehensive panel of experts in the fields of prophecy, caregiving, healing from trauma, shame, and abuse, and so much more. We continue to expand our teachings and programming to meet your needs. We're committed to healing the nations with biblical truth. Visit www.ignitinganation.com to develop a deeper walk with the Lord and start your journey to a transformed life. The Bible commands us to study to show ourselves approved, but most study using Bible study tools and not actually studying the Bible chapter and verse. Igniting a Nation is pleased to present Revealing the Bible, recorded and taught each week before a live audience. We take you deeper into the actual Bible and verse in both Hebrew and English and connect the dots between the Old and New Testament. You can attend our 2 classes in Tuscaloosa and Birmingham, or watch the program every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our other simulcast outlets. For more information, visit www.ignitinganation.com/events.
With today's smartphone technology, news, information, sports, and entertainment is widely available and almost unbounded. But what about the information that believers in Yeshua are looking for? Well, now there's an app for that. Igniting a Nation now has apps available for Android and iPhone. With our app, you'll gain access to everything you would in our website, from our featured guests to our live streaming shows. Visit Google Play or the Apple Store and download Igniting a Nation's new app today.
Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Cordila Jochim, author of the new book, From the Core, A Spiritual Journey of Losing Everything and Finding Hope. Cor, welcome back.
Thank you.
We are now at the point where you have moved, you've traveled, you've journeyed back and forth, and finally you land. And you meet the landlord, and you know something. And even in your brokenness, you recognize something in this man. What was it that you saw in him that he saw in you?
Ask me that last part again. What was it that I saw in him that he saw in me?
Right. The look that you recognized when he looked at you, you recognized something.
I did. I had become a student of faces. You know, because I no longer had an accurate representation of myself and who I was, I started to look for reflections in others about who I was. And I saw a lot of contempt and dismissal and rejection that caused me to believe that I was 50 cents. I also had become a master of seeing acceptance. And when the landlord opened the door, I had been living with my parents. I had a massive fall from grace. I left New York City, where I had a loft and a handbag line. I was living in the meatpacking district, which was a very chic district at that time. And I had to move back in with my parents in Liberty Lake, Washington in my early 30s. And I lived there. I subsisted, really, for quite a long period of time. Someone came to my door, asked me to do a project for them in the fashion industry. I did. She then issued a challenge that I moved to Seattle. And I had no idea how I was going to do that, because I couldn't even sit up. You know, my parents drove me over. They basically had to walk me to the door of this unit that I had rented sight unseen in Seattle, which is 5 hours away drive from where my parents live. And I opened the door to the landlord, and I saw his face morph into acceptance. He opened the door with excitement. I learned later he had Googled me, so he already knew what I looked like, and he'd already decided he thought I was a hottie. Like, that was just, he decided that. But I watched his face shift from excitement of when you meet a new person and you think there might be something and you're excited for that, to, it was like a watershed moment on his face. And he would say later, he is not a man of faith, but he would say later that in that moment, he heard a voice say, "Will you love this woman?" And he said yes. And I watched the yes transform his face. And so when I saw his acceptance of me, I immediately fell forward into that. It wasn't something I had experience in seeing a lot because of my journey. So when I saw it, it felt like water in the desert. And so, I had been living, I say in the book that, to me, he was air. I had been living in a space where I felt like I couldn't breathe. And he just felt like this unbelievable fresh breath of fresh air. So to me, he was life and air. And to him, I was love. And so he would move forward, loving me, often to his detriment. He was my caretaker. He was my lover. He was my friend. And he would, in the end, be a great deal of my undoing that then drove me forward deeper into the arms of God.
You said that when you told him about your situation, that he said to you, "That's not baggage, that's freight."
I said that to him. I warned him. Yeah, I said that to him. Because here's this guy, and I had no practice, Rabbi, in speaking about my circumstances. I hadn't dated in a very long time. I'd been living with my parents. I certainly hadn't kissed a man. Here was this guy that was so clearly in love with me, and I'm in Seattle, and I'm just trying to make it through the day, and all of a sudden I've got to deal with love. And I'm living in his home. He's my landlord, right? So I'm already like in this bind. And so he asked me out instantly, and it was not, I'd never been in the wake of a fire hose pursuit like his. He said, let's go out for dinner tonight. I said, no. And how about Friday? No. How about Saturday? How about Sunday? Like, he just was an unstoppable train. And so finally I said Sunday, and I couldn't leave the house. And I hadn't yet told him. So I said, I'm not leaving the house. I'm not even getting out of my yoga pants if you want to see me. It must have felt from his perspective like some pretty brutal, tough love, some pretty brutal standards in a way that I was holding up, but I was really just trying to survive the moment and get myself out of what I considered a bind. So he ended up coming over with sushi. I told him, he wanted to watch a movie. I said I didn't have a DVD player. At that time, we had DVD players. He came over carrying a DVD player. Some men bring flowers. He came carrying a DVD player and 3 movies. Like, the man was determined. This was a hill that he was going to die on. He was going to make me fall in love with him. And that was just his sort of resolve. And at the end of that evening, he kissed me. And I, quite frankly, was doing everything I could not to get sick on him as he's kissing me. I'm not thinking about how wonderful this first kiss is. I'm thinking about, oh, Lord, please, don't have me get sick on this person, right? So he left, and I did not know what to do. But I felt so bound by my circumstances, not only my physical circumstances. I had just gotten a new job that I couldn't even go into the office. So now I'm trying to figure out how to do this full-time job. I no longer have my parents caring for me. I cannot care for myself. And now, on top of everything, I have this man who wants to date me, and I don't know what to do about it. And so I had taken to sending new doctors a 14-page document that detailed my medical history. And so in the absence of having the words to sort of articulate what was going on with me, I just emailed him that 14-page document. And in my email, I said, "You did not know this when you kissed me. You do not have to take this on. You are under no obligation to have a second date with me. This isn't baggage. This is freight." Mm. And he, his initial response was he didn't think he could take it. I mean, listen, if someone sends you a 14-page document and tells you they've been bedbound, that's a lot. And when I met him, he was still in his 20s. He was 7 years younger than me. So he was a younger man, younger than me. And also he was still a young man. And here comes this person that he's fallen in love with, but he's tangled with the reality of her circumstances. And so he would tell me later that he spent the night after receiving my document driving around the city with a friend of his, just sobbing, knowing I think the mountain that was in front of him, and also being called to climb it. And so he came back the next day, wanted to take me for a walk. He arrived through the door and kissed me, half on the face, half on the mouth. And, that's kind of where we lived the next 7 years of our life, in half on the cheek, half on the mouth, half into a relationship, half out of a relationship. And that never fully committing was really ended up being the death of our relationship.
So this comes to an end.
Yeah.
Culminated by your third miscarriage? Second miscarriage with Lumen. And a very difficult miscarriage.
Yeah.
Not like the first one. This one you wanted to do on your own, like the first one happened. But it was complicated, and that was really what kind of drove it over the edge. There was promise of marriage, a platinum diamond ring, and what you had, but there was never a culmination, and this was really more than really both of you could bear. And so, but yet this led you to start having conversations that you had never had before. There was a new man in your life. He was the unseen. He was the comforter. He was the one who you could pour out to, because Dad wasn't a sympathetic ear. Mom had always dutifully done her part, but not a sympathetic, deep, philosophical relationship. More of the faithful, caregiving, nurturing mom. What transpired in this new narrative that defied medical diagnosis of dysautonomia, of looking at naturopaths and diet and gluten-free and all these other things, thinking that you were going to orchestrate your healing? What happened?
I began negotiating with God. And anyone with their back against the wall who cannot take another moment begins the process of negotiation. And I was very clear, I think it's important to also say the landlord only knew me. Our relationship only took place within the four walls of our home. So we had this, someone jokingly called it Stockholm syndrome, or the girl under the stairs. My son rose and set with this one individual who was my everything, and had been really for 7 years. And so as we were fraying, and I had lost the first pregnancy, and I was pregnant with Lumen, whom we named both immediately very quickly, I began feeling the landlord slipping away. Mm-hmm. And my conversation I had no name for it. I mean, I had the loose construct of the idea of God, but I had never entered into a real conversation with God. And my conversation began with negotiation. God, please don't take him too. Please don't take him too. I cannot take it. I cannot take it. And that was actually, I misspoke, that was actually after I lost Lumen. And I was sleeping upstairs by myself. Some of my physical symptoms had began to abate through this miraculous discovery of treatment of what would actually help me feel better. My brain injury never resolved. I still deal with it to this day. It's an irreparable schism. It's my, thorn in my side, right? I will always deal with this. But the symptoms began giving me space from that fight or flight protocol. And I began to have space to think and consider and ponder. And in that space, I lay upstairs by myself, my womb empty of Lumen, my heart being emptied of him. And everything just felt like it was running through my hands like water. And I had lost so much in life already up to that point. And my conversation with God began with negotiation. God, please don't take him. Please don't take him too. And in that conversation, because it wasn't just a one-way negotiation, God began speaking back to me. And you called him the Comforter, and that really was what happened. I began receiving comfort, not assurance that the landlord wouldn't be taken from me, because in the end he would be. But I began receiving comfort in a way that I felt it in my body. I'd always looked for comfort outside of myself, or comfort from my symptoms, the release of my symptoms. That's why I pursued healing. Like, I overturned every rock, like really, every rock to pursue healing, thinking that comfort existed if I could just get a respite from the pressure of my symptoms. But comfort began coming to me from another realm, from the spirit realm. And that began the real healing process within me. But it began with negotiation.
But it led to an encounter,
Yeah.
to hearing a message,
Yes.
having now kind of a framework
Yeah.
of faith that was beginning to be developed in you, birthed in death. As every story in the Bible shows us that one must die first in order to be born again. And Lumen, through the tragedy of the loss of this life, put you on a quest in search for a greater light. Who did God bring into your path? And how do those encounters begin to shape who you are today? And although you'll always deal with this Pauline thorn in your flesh, you have claimed your healing and restoration and new life and new light. But it came at the voice and the hands of others. How did that take place?
Well, you said I claimed my healing. What I actually started doing was claiming my wholeness. I claimed my wholeness, and through my wholeness came my healing. So you had asked me who God put in my life. The first person God put in my life was a woman I called Dizzy, and her dog Stella. And it was a relationship that the landlord had that I asked for timeshare in our separation. I had encountered this woman through him. I really liked her. I didn't know her because I didn't really spend time with people, but I knew of her loosely, and I wanted to get to know her more. And Dizzy is an incredible outdoors woman. And so she really began bringing me outdoors, physically outdoors. And I got all the hiking gear. I mean, this is, Rabbi, I was a woman who hadn't moved a muscle in a decade. And all of a sudden, I'm now going to think I'm going to hike, right? And so I get outfitted with like made to measure. I'm in Seattle over here. So we make to measure your backpack. So it sits on your hips just right and on your shoulders just right. And then I got like top of the line hiking boots. I mean, I just got outfitted with everything, and I went hiking with Dizzy. And to put it into perspective, I'm in like full regalia. I'm like battle ready to take the hill, right? And there's a kid like maybe 7, 8, 9 years old passing me on the same hill wearing flip-flops. So like... So I was, way over outfitted. But Dizzy and I went on this hike of this place called Rattlesnake Ledge. And at the time, I had lost Lumen. I had lost the landlord. I had left my job. Everything was down to the studs. And I was everything had burned down. And I was on very shaky, when you see a deer come out, they have these little wobbly legs. And that was me. I was just trying to find my own legs again. And so Dizzy took me on this hike of a place called Rattlesnake Ledge. Anyone who's in the Pacific Northwest knows of Rattlesnake Ledge. It's a very easy hike, but a very beautiful one. It's extremely beautiful. Big payoff for very little effort. And Dizzy and I hiked up to Rattlesnake Ledge, and she wanted me to enjoy the view. It's quite literally a ledge, so it almost looks like a tabletop, and you can sit up there, and all the hikers litter this ledge and oversee Rattlesnake River that lays below Rattlesnake Lake. And so I had no time for it. I went up. I was like, wanted to get down as fast as I could, because I really feared that I would be that embarrassing person that needed to be airlifted off the mountain. You know, I'd been so terrorized by my body, and I thought, here we go again. I'll make it up, but I won't make it down. So I had no time for the view. I just wanted to get back down to the parking lot. And it was in the parking lot, after hiking with my brand new friend, doing this brand new thing that I hadn't done in so long, that Dizzy was cleaning off Stella's paws to get her ready for the car ride home. And I, for the very first time, just took in what actually had occurred. And I could sit with the fact that I had made it 2 miles up and back. And I was sitting in the parking lot, and there's the steep rock face of Rattlesnake. It's really quite steep, and it shimmers because it's damp. Everything in the Pacific Northwest is damp. So it's shimmering with this dampness, and it was so awesome. Truly awesome. And the sunset, anyone who knows when a beautiful day hits the Pacific Northwest, there is quite possibly nowhere on earth that is more stunning. And I was sitting in the parking lot, finally able to take in all that was around me. And I just kept saying, almost like it was like a mantra that rose up within me. And I just kept saying, like rocking back and forth, this is beautiful. This is beautiful. This is beautiful. And I heard back, so are you. So are you. And that was the moment, that schism that told me I was 50 cents on the dollar and I was less than, and I was broken. It just like, it's almost like it was a sound, a sonic boom that resonated within me. And that schism just slammed together in a way that brought complete and utter wholeness. And from that point forward, I've never been the same. And that happened 5 years ago. So it wasn't an encounter in church. I didn't crack open the Bible. I didn't get encountered by someone who was a strong believer. I got met by the God of the universe, sitting in the parking lot of Rattlesnake Ledge, spoke a word over my life and told me I was beautiful, and everything in my life has changed. And that moment of wholeness led me on the path of healing, because there's a distance between recognizing your wholeness and living in it. Like living the wholeness. And I had to be raised up and trained up and taught to live whole. And I'm still in training today. And now God has brought into my life powerful, spiritual leaders and prayer warriors and women of faith and men of faith that walk beside me and begin to walk alongside, shoulder to shoulder, as we all learn to live whole. And that has been the new reality of my life, of this life of living whole, not just understanding my wholeness, but actually living it out every day.
Praise God. We've been talking with Cordila Jochim, author of the new book, From the Core, A Spiritual Journey of Losing Everything and Finding Hope. A 40-year journey. From this point, an anniversary coming up of 40 years of dealing with a traumatic brain injury, the PTSD, the trauma, all that she had to navigate, to have an encounter with the God of heaven and earth, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God who sent his only begotten Son to this earth to die for you, to die for her, to bring wholeness, and wholeness that brought healing. Today she comes from a place of victory and not a place of infirmity. Not at the hand of man or medical science, but by the hand of the one who made her, fearfully and wonderfully and beautifully made her for such a time as this. This is her time. Her time to tell her story, to take you on an emotional roller coaster like you have never been on, till you finally take that breath with her, till you finally hike up that mountain, that trail, and you come down to that parking lot, and you're there right with her, and you can hear that voice, and you can see the palpable change in every cell in her body is now transformed from broken to whole, from 50 cents to more valuable than silver or gold. Cordila Jochim, you bless us with your story, and may God bless all the works of your hand. Your journey has just begun. May God go before you and prepare the way to break the hearts and heal the brokenhearted. Bind them up with the same kind of love that you've received. May you be an ambassador for the kingdom of heaven. May God's light so shine through you that man will see your good works and bring glory to your Father in heaven. Thank you for sharing this incredible story with us here on Revealing the Truth.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.